Welcome back to the Live for Life podcast. You look a bit surprised there. You all right?
Yeah, I'm just a bit nervous. I've not got my hat on this time.
Ah, yes.
And I noticed in one of the other clips, one of the clips in the previous episode, that I have a mobile forehead. and I do my deep dog dives into the way I look on camera. And I noticed that your forehead is not as mobile as mine.
What does a mobile forehead mean?
It sort of wrinkles and frowns and stuff like that all the time. So I don't know. Have you had like anything injected into your forehead to prevent it?
Not yet. No,
Not yet.
Not happened yet.
Maybe when you're 30.
Yeah, might be but worth doing then. I thought you were about to say you hadn't quite realised that you were thinning slightly in the lid.
No, that happened a long time ago. I definitely noticed that a long time
And obviously
ago.
we tried a brief trip to Cornwall, actually it was, and we tried an alternative. Didn't quite work with the seaweed.
The seaweed, yeah. Unexpectedly, Angus threw a load of seaweed on my head. And we decided I didn't look good with long hair.
Which is good to find out.
Yeah.
So that's why we've stuck to where we are now. But I'm also interested. So I haven't seen the Under Armour cap in a while. Does it still exist?
It does exist, and I had it washed. So the Under Armour logo is white. I tend to think that the lack of branding is a bit more professional. So going to work, I tend to wear my fake Loro Piana hat, and then in the gym, I will. It's a bit like sort of big reveal. I'll take off that one and put my Under Armour hat on in the gym.
What do we do? This is going to be a problem when we are sponsored by a clothing brand and you have to wear their cap and it doesn't.
And it doesn't suit me.
That's going to be genius. I can't wait.
It won't be very good branding. It's like, wear this cap, you look an idiot.
Should we crack on with the podcast?
Yes.
Or anything else to report?
No. The podcast is going to be about dopamine, so I'm feeling sort
You're
of
fired
excited.
up, aren't
I'm
you?
fired
You're
up.
really fired up. Because
I think this is actually a very important point, actually. Who in your life gives you a dopamine surge, right?
Wow.
So it's important. So Angus and I was going to say dope each other up. That's the wrong phrase. But Angus and I think we both incite dopamine surges in each other. And I think it's quite important in your sort of gym buddy to actually have someone that gives you that dopamine surge that makes you want to go to the gym.
And fires you up. But yes, today we are talking, even though you didn't even mention it, you just started going on about dopamine. Today we are discussing dopamine, natural versus artificial, which I knew you'd be very excited because there's a lot of science in it and there's a lot of facts. But funny enough, this book was inspired partly from previous episodes. We touched on dopamine, obviously with cold water therapy and cryotherapy and saunas and obviously training as a whole. But I read the book, The Dose Effect, which is by a chap called TJ Power, who is a neuroscientist. And for my dyslexic brain, it was perfectly laid out in a nice summary way, really nicely spaced out throughout the book and very easy to digest. So I thoroughly enjoyed reading it as well. So TJ Power, thank you for putting it in a way that was very easy to digest and understand. But what he goes in very surface levels to a degree in terms of the average person to be able to process it really easily, but also doesn't make you feel bad for having a artificial dopamine addiction, but talks from personal experience, but then also how you effectively go from, honestly, that craving of just artificial dopamine the whole time to looking for more natural dopamine levels.
There's one point I'd like to bring up in what you've just said, because you've said this several times in podcasts. Quote, for my dyslexic brain. And I think this is something that we talk about quite a lot in the podcasts, about how we see ourselves and frame things negatively or positively. And whenever you say, for my dyslexic brain, you have a negative connotation in the way you say that.
Do I?
And you and I have discussed this over the past few weeks about how positive dyslexia can be. And how many of the world's politicians, business leaders, some of the most successful people in the world have got dyslexia. So if you should start to reframe your dyslexia permanently as a magical thing you possess, which makes you more creative, which makes you an amazing podcaster, which makes your verbal delivery better, rather than focusing on negatives in terms of your ability to read, I think would have very positive outcomes, Angus.
Do you know what I very often do, and I have done in particular, but thank you for highlighting that. And I very much see now dyslexia as a superpower. But obviously we'll dive into this in episodes to come because we're going to do big interviews with each other. But it's so ingrained from my teenage years. And I think that is something that I'm still working on. You know, I very much for a large chunk of my life felt like I was less adequate because of effectively the way my brain worked and found school extremely hard. I'm very fortunate now that I have been able to use dyslexia as a superpower. And, you know, it's great that you obviously highlighted that. And it very much is. But when you're for so long thinking in a different way, it actually does take time, like with someone on their fitness journey, to flip their mindset to go, do you know what? I am this person. So I guess I am still in the process of improving my own self-esteem when it comes to that.
Yeah. But on to dopamine. So I think we should start by defining dopamine, because when I've discussed it on my Instagram, have had a lot of people saying, isn't that just adrenaline? So I think it's important to compare the two things. So dopamine, for a start, is a neurotransmitter and neuromodulator that plays a key role in reward, motivation, movement, focus, and learning. It signals anticipation of reward. And this is very, very different from adrenaline. Because adrenaline, I've got a very precise description of adrenaline, it's very, very different. It's much more focused on a fight or flight mentality. And so adrenaline is released by a different part of the body. And what's the most important thing about adrenaline is that it is secreted very, very rapidly, whereas dopamine is released very slowly. So if you're about to be attacked, you'll have an adrenaline surge and you can run really quickly. If you are doing some weight training, you get a gradual buildup in the dopamine, and then it will just surge and it'll make you feel good. And then it will go down again, then it'll make you feel good again, and it can go up and down. If you're doing a run, for example, the dopamine will gradually build up over time, and eventually you'll get the runner's high. It's not at all the same with adrenaline. If you're doing a run and you've got the runner's high, then someone comes up behind you and is about to attack you, then you'll see what adrenaline is and how different it is to dopamine, because you'll suddenly be able to run very, very fast. So adrenaline and dopamine are very, very different. So this podcast is absolutely on dopamine, and it's a very, very important motivational force in the gym.
So give us a quick summary in a G-Dog fashion. What actually is dopamine, G-Dog?
So dopamine, as I've just described, is a neurotransmitter and a neuromodulator. And what it does is it signals this anticipation of reward, and it reinforces behaviors in your brain that lead to positive outcomes. So it's synthesized from amino acids. There's two steps that cause the amino acid synthesizing process. And once released, dopamine binds to receptors in your brain and then is later reabsorbed by dopamine transporters. And this is a really bizarre but quite an important point, because if you're thinking about the dopamine released by drugs like cocaine or amphetamines, what they do is they make you have a longer dopamine surge because they block the dopamine transporter from reabsorbing or reuptaking the dopamine. So if you take cocaine, you get a dopamine surge from the cocaine, and then it doesn't go down again. So it stays high. And so you have this dopamine surge that lasts artificially for a longer period of time, but then it absolutely crashes, and it's horrendous. Whereas a dopamine surge for weight training, exercise, running, etc., will gradually rise, then be reabsorbed and go down, and gradually rise again. It's a much more sustainable part of dopamine than any sort of drug abuse.
So effectively, when it comes to dopamine, obviously playing very dumb here, what you're saying is the kind of short-term hit of junk foods, alcohol, drugs, gambling, caffeine in excess, that is obviously the artificial dopamine, which you almost get such a quick reward that you inevitably have a crash. And the natural dopamine comes from hard work, effectively, to some degree. And it's not even hard work. We're talking going on a walk, could be a training session, could be learning, whatever, right?
Yeah, because dopamine comes from so many different forces. So I would naturally have assumed dopamine comes mainly from an exercise form, but absolutely not. So exercise and resistance training, one key part. Cold water exposure, that you talk about a lot, another one. Social connection, laughter, fun, friendliness activities. Any goal setting, interestingly, can actually give you dopamine surges. And achieving any small wins gives you a dopamine surge. Being creative, a novel experience, having some curiosity that results in you discovering something, or listening to emotionally powerful music. So this was a big eureka moment for me because I realized you can maximize your dopamine surges by combining weight training with music listening. Now, Angus and I have completely different perspectives on this because I don't think music has the same impact on your brain as it does on mine. I mean, I think you regularly comment about me dancing with my hands in the air.
I've seen it a few times. It's an interesting move, that's for sure. But G-Dog has this ability to put his hands in the air like you just don't care, I think is the quote. And I don't know if any of you have seen the Lisa Simpson gif where she kind of wiggles her hips and puts her hands down and goes, woo! But that's what G-Dog likes to do when he's on this like crazy dopamine surge, doesn't it? And I've seen it in the gym. I've seen it. Well, I haven't had the luxury of seeing it on the trading floor, so if anyone's seen it.
When have you seen me dancing in a gym?
One place you will see it is if you ever get G-Dog in a nightclub, this comes out. So annoyingly, I don't actually have any footage, but I do need to try and get some and play it alongside me right here because it is
There was
fantastic.
a very famous scene, I think, in a nightclub in South Africa. I don't know how we ended up in Cape Town. But anyway, I did have a massive dopamine surge with one particular piece of music that came on.
Do you know those like drunk guys who come out to go, I feel so alive, man? It was like that. G-Dog just like, I feel so alive, Angus. And then, woo! Oh, so good.
But I've discovered, I mean, this is a really amazing thing, right? So if you look at the study, and I've got loads of studies about this, about music and dopamine, but why it works for different people in different ways. So this is me and you, why you don't get these same reactions. I think you might get it from like some pretty bizarre music, but for me, it's obviously...
Sorry, okay. Just because I don't listen to Taylor Swift like you do. You know what, G-Dog is literally there. It's just like in the gym, bicep curling, looking really serious. It is literally just Taylor Swift going, I stay out too late.
That's so bad.
And it's just,
it is, you know it's not that.
Yeah,
Anyway,
but it is.
But anyway, so music is a rare, what's called abstract stimulus that can cause both anticipatory and peak dopamine release.
Could you argue, though, that has to be done alongside something else that is more of a natural dopamine hit? Because is music...
No, honestly, it's incredible.
Wow.
So there's a landmark study in the magazine Nature Neuroscience in 2011 that used music. And the conclusion was... I was literally so excited about this. The conclusion was that dopamine is released in 2 stages when listening to emotionally intense music. Now, you can define emotionally intense music in different ways. It can be something that is very, very powerful and meaningful because you obviously got engaged to a particular type of music in Cornwall. That can set you off.
That fired me up.
Whenever Angus looks at the Instagram post of him getting engaged, there's a piece of music on there, and that obviously has caused a dopamine surge. That's one example. But this is the important thing, I think, with house music and the concept of when the beat drops, right? So you get a build-up in anticipatory dopamine as the music builds to a crescendo. And then during the emotional climax of the music, when the beat drops, it's quite often called the chills moment, then you get another dopamine surge. So this is why people who are in clubs in Ibiza get these massive dopamine surges when they're listening to music, even if they're not on anything dodgy, because of the actual crescendo that's built up. And then when the beat drops, your dopamine just goes through the roof.
Do you know your top 5 dopamine songs?
I have got a playlist. I've got, actually, to be honest, I've got lots of playlists. I've got one playlist which is specifically called Boost. And so when I'm going for a PB, I'll put that playlist on. I'm not going to be able to list all the songs. I can't remember them all. But I'll put that playlist on. But I find, and maybe this is the thing with dopamine, that over time I need to change the boost tracks. Because if I always use the same boost track, then my surge is less. Whereas if I introduce a new boost track, then I'm more likely to hit a new PB. So I actually have a new boost track. I can't remember what it's called, that I instituted last week. And yeah, it's in many ways, I look forward to going to the gym because of the boost track.
Wow. So I need to basically sort my playlist out. But I will give you my top 5, and they're going to be so different to yours, because I actually like a bit more of a slow, emotional tune to really fire me up. So I was back squatting today, and throughout the sets, I actually picked my 5 songs.
Wow.
So I'm going to read them out here.
Please.
You're going to be shell-shocked. So number 1 is From Now On, The Greatest Showman. Have you heard that?
This is a famous Angus song.
Yeah,
This is probably the song that Angus is most associated with. Like everybody in social media, everyone in your friendship group, most of the people on, Fox News and everything talk about this song.
Absolute banger. Really fires you up. Really deep and emotional at the start, and then bam, as you say, the drop. Ordinary, Alex Warren, obviously the proposal song. Just gets me really deep and emotional. I find I have to almost feel emotional to perform the set better. You clearly need to feel fired up, so that's just a difference in the way they are. Obviously, my karaoke song, Angels by Robbie Williams, gets me so fired up. And through it, you bash out.
That is quite a good one, actually. I agree with that one.
All of Me, John Legend, emotional one as well.
Yours are much more sort of slower and emotional than mine.
Love your curves and all. I won't ruin it, but yeah, Edges. It's fantastic. And then the final one. This I think is one of the top most emotional songs that if you want to hit a PB, it's going to happen. And it's Goodbye My Lover by James Blunt.
That is quite good.
So I like my kind
it's
of
very
deep emotional. I don't know why, but for some reason, if I want to hit PBs, I go deep and emotional.
But it sounds like also you need sort of to verbalize. So the songs need to be something you can sing along to.
Beat doesn't do it for me, really. I just go, what's this racket? Which is interesting.
Beat is absolutely critical for me.
Yeah.
I need to have that build up to, it's absolutely the anticipation of the point where the beat drops and then suddenly the music goes. It just sets me off.
Well, it'll be interesting, guys. Actually, please do message in off this episode to G-Dog and to me or to the Live for Life page your best songs, because I want to hear them.
Yeah, I think what I should do is I should maybe, when this episode goes live, I should list my boost tracks so people can actually see them. And
actually, do you know what? You've got the Spotify link, right?
Yeah.
What we'll do is we'll put it in the description.
Yeah.
So we'll put the Spotify link in the description on. I know we can put it on YouTube, so we'll definitely put it in YouTube. So it'll be up there, yeah.
But it says so in the research study that I focused on, this point that we're raising now is absolutely valid. So dopamine reactions by individuals vary according to genetics. So this is difference in dopamine receptor density.
Wow.
Also, your neural wiring. So it may be your dyslexia that causes that. That could be an interesting thing. So you're more responsive to verbal cues, whereas I'm more responsive to beats. That could be another thing there. Your musical background. So, and this is exactly down to your engagement music, for example. So your training or your emotional engagement with a particular song can affect your dopamine release. Personal meaning, exactly the point there. So a lot of these songs, I mean, The Greatest Showman, a lot of personal meaning to you as well.
Actually, to be honest, all of them to some degree do. Yeah,
you and Izzy went to see The Greatest Showman together, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And she bought it for you, didn't she?
Yeah, it was a birthday present.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which you would have hated.
Yeah, I would have absolutely.
G-Dog hates musicals.
Yeah, I hate musicals.
But do you know what it is? I think that needs a mindset shift. I think we need to almost plant you in front row, give you the full Angus G-Dog experience. Because often I've found with stuff I've done with you, I've managed to make it better, like the North.
That's true.
So if I can do the North...
How did you manage to make the North sunny? That was really weird.
Well, I just have this ability.
You sprinkled special stuff in
energy,
the clouds.
Just took good energy to it.
Weird.
And funnily enough, you went last time and it rained. But it was actually sunny when I was just up there.
Yeah.
It's genius.
Whenever I go with you, it's sunny.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then the final thing is there's a thing called musical anhedonia. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. But apparently 5% of people feel little or no pleasure from music despite normal responses to other rewards. And that must be a horrible disease to have. If you have no pleasure from music. I mean, I just couldn't imagine my life without music. So, this is something. So, here we are saying go to the gym, combine it with music because it'll make you fired up and go to the gym more. There will be a section of people, 5% of people, who that won't have the same effect on. So, if that doesn't, don't let the fact that going to the gym and listening to music and you're not getting the same vibe put you off, because it just means you're an anhedonal person.
So is there anything else you do on a personal level to naturally raise your dopamine levels? Or do you just think...
I do quite often have an espresso before going to the gym. Is that raising my dopamine? I'm not really sure.
Not really.
Not really.
Not in a way. But I, obviously, off the back of reading the dose effect, and I've spoken about this earlier in previous podcasts, the big one for me, and I know complicated, obviously, with you, G-Dog, with getting straight into work, but has been the no phones for the first 30 minutes of the day. That's been an absolute game changer. And it was when, again, it's similar to, obviously, with the cocaine about the spike and then the drop. So when the first thing we do, and you also realize when you first stop going on your phone first thing, you realize actually how addicted to it you are. So the first few days I said, right, I'm not going to go on for 30 minutes. I found it so hard. And that triggered in my mind, wow, I am so hooked to this device. So after time, now I almost first thing, I resent it and I know how much better I'm going to feel. And the reason is because of dopamine. So when we wake up, obviously our dopamine levels are below base levels. And what we need to do is get it to effectively base level. And the way we do that, which is obviously the base level throughout the day, and the way we do that is by doing things that compound to get to that. So simple thing, make the bed, turn the shower cold, empty the dishwasher. Just doing a few tasks in that first half an hour of the day, getting some steps in if you can. I will always do things that involve, they're not hard as such, but they are, I like to call them like dopamine bankers, that when I sit down at the desk half an hour later, 45 minutes later, I feel so much better in myself.
Exactly. This is what I have read. And I think your question caught me out a little bit when you say, what do you do to create dopamine surges? Because it's only during the research I realized that I'm actually doing that without realizing.
No, of course, yeah.
So the key thing about dopamine surges is that you get them from small, consistent wins, which is why I think, and there'll be a controversial statement, but why I think the gym is better than running. Because if you go to the gym, you are literally having small, consistent wins. So you're getting a PB or doing something that's you're achieving on a dumbbell overhead press or a bench press or a barbell back squat or some other exercise, and you're getting lots of wins all the way through your 45 minutes, hour in the gym. You're getting multiple wins. So you're constantly going on this dopamine sort of anticipation high. Whereas if you're a marathon runner, then you're just building up to the runner's high, and that's it. And so, and particularly if you're like a really sort of aerobically fit person, by the time you get to the runner's high, it may be 20 miles in. So you can argue that marathon running or long distance running is not as useful a dopamine driver as going to the gym. So I don't know how many people will say I get the runner's high repeatedly through the run, or whether they will say I have the runner's high at just one moment in the run. But I've quite often, when I'm on holiday in Corsica in the summer, I've got a run that I do which is about 5 or 6 kilometers, and I usually try to time it so that I get to this sort of raised area above the sea just as the sun is setting, at the point where I anticipate my runner's high to emerge. And I find that's very, very powerful. So I will, maybe 4 kilometers in, I'll start to get the runner's high, and I'll see this incredible sunset over the ocean, and it just ramps up the dopamine level. But then that's over, and then the rest of the run is like I've done it. Whereas I think with weight training, it can happen very repeatedly.
I think the thing that surprised me the most about learning about dopamine is actually the natural motivator it's become, and it's actually really helped my discipline. So not that I wasn't disciplined before, but when I obviously read the book and really learned, oh, wow, like we should be looking to get more natural dopamine, particularly in the modern day world. But it makes me do things because I'm like, I need to get some natural dopamine. So it'll be simple things, like I'll be lying on the sofa and I might just be feeling a bit tired. And more often than not, that is because of a dopamine depletion, because I might have been scrolling my phone, I might have been watching some trash on TV, which actually is much better than scrolling your phone. But let's say I've been scrolling, and you might feel a bit tired. A lot of people go, oh, I'm just tired, I'm not motivated. You actually need to fight that and go, I'm going to get some natural dopamine. I guarantee 10, 15 minutes of movement, suddenly you have energy. So a lot of people put their energy levels down to it. And that's what got me so hooked on, obviously, cold water therapy. And I'm not one of those people that swears by 3 minutes in the morning. I literally, in my morning routine, will turn the shower cold at the end, literally for just a small dopamine buzz. But particularly, obviously, down in Cornwall, and when I ever have access to cold water immersion, the knowing about the 2.5x dopamine, if done, obviously, for the correct amount of time, drives me to do it because I know how much better I'm going to feel. And that, again, that's like with training as well. We talk about how much easier it is to train when you scientifically know it is pushing you in the right direction, right? The beauty of doing those hard things that might at the time not feel great, you know you're going to feel better. So as a motivator, use dopamine.
Yeah, and I was going to say, if you're in the office even, the idea that dopamine comes from small, repeated wins, having a to-do list of action items is very, very important. So if every morning, I get into the office 6:45, 7 o'clock, and every day I've got a to-do list of things to do, if by 9 o'clock I've ticked off 3 or 4 things, then I've basically had an hour of dopamine surges because I've done a few things. This is why I think it's really important, for example, in careers, in jobs, in offices, to have a morning meeting every day. So just actually ticking off the morning meeting in itself gives you a dopamine surge because you feel you've achieved something by having a morning meeting, which results in team engagement, results in an action plan, results in something to talk about, etc. So if you just go into the office and there's no structure, then you're unlikely to have any dopamine surges. So structure is really important.
Absolutely. Wow. That was a powerful episode, wasn't it, G-Dog?
Every episode's a powerful episode.
Absolutely.
Angus.
And it leads me on to nicely. And we actually touched on Angus in this episode, which was exciting when you called me out. Next episode, you're going to be interviewing me.
Oh, that's the next episode, is it?
And the episode after, I'm going to be interviewing you. So that's extremely exciting. And then there's a very special guest on the episode after that, who I won't reveal yet. But that's going to be an exciting one too. So the next few episodes we're going to go deep, aren't we, Dog?
I'm quite nervous about this.
Yeah, what I'm quite excited about is you're interviewing me first, so I'll be able to, I'm probably going to be sobbing on the other end of the mic. But I think G-Dog will be sat there like, oh, what's he going to ask me?
I'm going to get very defensive.
And the great thing
between my legs
is he can't do a deep dog dive for it.
No.
So he's not going to be able to, well, you might have notes there knowing you, but I'm going to make it so that actually doing research, I just want it to be natural.
No, I'm not going to have any notes. When you interview me, I will not have any notes. It will all be deep dog dive from the dog.
Exactly, and it'll be deep dog dive from the Ang as well on the other end. So very exciting, guys. Can't wait to share those episodes with you. As always, thank you for the support on the podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.